Hey guys, this is Courtney over at Oiled Planner. So today I'm going to show you how to create these gorgeous dividers for my personal rings. It's a personal size Recollections planner, and the very first thing that I do is I create the actual divider itself. So I go over to the square box, highlight it, and then I create the size that I want. So mine are 4 inches wide by 6.75 inches high. And then once that's completed, I then add the tab to it. So I use the rounded corner box, and those tabs I create at the size of 0.3 wide and 1 inch high. Once I have that completed, because I do these in succession, I use the old divider, and because I already created, this is the divider that we're actually creating. I put that inside my current box, and then I move the tab down to where I need it. So you can see that I'm just trying to center everything, make sure that it fits the way I need it to fit, and then I move that one back out of the way. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit so that I can center it. I tried to center it without it being zoomed, and it was a little difficult, so this just allows me to be a little bit more precise. So as you can see, after zooming in, it's easier to see where everything is. So I'm going to go ahead, make sure it's where it's at, and then highlight everything, and then right-click and group, and then right-click again and weld. And that's what creates your tab so that it cuts all together. So the next thing that I do is I zoom back out, and then I'm going to create a mirrored image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the right side, and I'm going to open my duplicate panel, and then I'm going to mirror it to the right. And that way both of them are exactly the same, and I don't run the risk of accidentally moving the tab to a different place, because what I do is I'm going to be able to print them, and then I actually use a tape runner to tape them together and then laminate them. It makes them a little bit more sturdy because I'm using double paper instead of actually printing front and back on one sheet of paper. So the next thing I'm doing is filling in the patterns, and I'm using the Planner Society Christmas kit from this year. It is a digital download. I have everything saved into 2 folders under the Planner Society, and I'm filling both of those in. So as you can see, I'm using this really pretty plaid deer, and it's green, which is one of my favorite colors. What I'm doing now is I'm actually going to scale the pattern a little bit. I want the pattern to be a little bit smaller. As you can see on the embellishments, I really want those to pop. So by making the pattern a little smaller, it makes them pop off the page a little bit more. So the way to do that is to open your fill panel, go into your patterns, click advanced options, and then scale your pattern to where you want it. Now I also tried to do this on the back one because I did want that pattern to actually be a little bit larger. But when I tried to do that, it actually didn't work out the way I wanted it. So the next thing that I worked on was the bow in the upper right corner. So you're going to drag and drop whatever embellishments you want on your divider into silhouette. There is another way that you can actually do that. This is just my preferred method. So what I did was I took 2 of the plaid bows, one in the red and one in the black and white, and I put them both on the gray space to the left. I sized the back bow first to where I wanted it, and then I sized the other bow to be able to lay on top, and then grouped them both together, and then moved it onto my divider. And then as you can see here, my divider is actually to the front of my page, so whenever I try to do that with my bow, it goes behind. So the way to do that is you just right click and click on bring to front. So now that I brought it to the front, it's now where you can see it, and it lays on top of my divider and not behind it. So I'm just aligning both the upper edges to the edges of the divider. And then the next thing I'm going to do is the planner and the ornament. Now the ornament is definitely much smaller in scale than it was when I drug it over from my folder, but I wanted to make sure it was the exact same size, so I just copied and pasted it from the other one. So, and the way to resize is just like you do anything else. You just drag your corners, and that'll keep the scale so that it doesn't distort. And then again, you just will highlight both of them, group them together. After you have it placed where you wanted it, then I group everything together. That way if I do make any adjustments, the entire page will adjust and not the just the embellishments. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create that white text box that's behind my text so that you can see it. And it took me a minute or so to figure out that it was actually filling in, but again, my box was behind my divider, so I needed to actually go in and make sure that I clicked on the actual text box itself. So as you can see here, there were a few times where I tried to get it and I just kept hitting the divider. So as you can see, it was turned white and it was just behind my divider. So now I'm just going to go through and I'm going to place it where I want it and just make sure that it's centered. It's not really centered, I would say, on the whole page or on the whole divider. I just kind of place it where I think it looks nice. And you can see that's one of the reasons why I zoom in. It just allows me to be a little bit more precise. So once I complete that, then I'm actually going to change my transparency. So under that same fill box, I just take the transparency up a little bit. Make sure that you have highlighted what you want the transparency to be. And I believe I took it up to 20%. So you can still see some of the pattern through, which is nice. So again, I just highlight everything, hit group, and that way it's all grouped together. So the next thing that we're going to create is the patterned letters. So you go into your text, and here again, you're going to see as I start typing that my font's going behind my divider. So what I actually did this time was instead of continuing to keep bringing everything to the front, I just actually sent my divider to the back, and that way anything in the future that I do will be on top. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select the text tool and I'm going to type in "For unto us a child is born," and once I have that typed in, you highlight everything. And this is the fun part. You get to fill it in with pattern paper. So you're going to go over to your folder, open up your papers, and then you're going to pick the pattern that you want. I chose to do the same red floral pattern to be able to tie in the back of the divider with the front. Sorry about that, guys. I had a mail pop up. So you just drag it, and then because you highlighted everything, it fills in everything all at one time, which is nice. So I opened up the fill box because my plan for this was to go ahead and scale the pattern again. I wanted to make the pattern a little bit bigger so it didn't look quite so busy. But when I did that, it actually removed the pattern from the A and the C. So it didn't, unfortunately, work the way I wanted it to. So I just decided to leave it the way that it was. And here you can just see me. I'm just trying to be a little bit more precise with the sizing. And I can't get it to go really above 100 or 101, so I just left it at 100, and that way it still looks beautiful, don't get me wrong, like I love it. Alright, so the next thing I do is I go in and I choose what font I want, and I'm using A.R. Christie, which is a free font that I had gotten, I want to say from 1,000 free fonts. If I can find it, I'll link it in the description below. So the next thing that I'm doing is I'm changing the thickness around the font. So I have it up to 1 point, and then I click on print lines of selected shape, and that way when I actually print it, you'll see that black line, and it just helps my font to pop a little bit more off the paper. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to resize the font so that it fits in that text box. And as you can see, I'm just dragging the corner, and that keeps everything to scale so it doesn't distort. And then I'm using the outline of the box as my guide. Once I'm finished with this, I actually went through and I ungrouped my box from my divider. I highlighted both my text and the box so that I could center it under the transform tool. So you go in and you click this little centering tool, and it centers everything vertically and horizontally to make sure that you have even spacing on all sides. And then I went into my font or my text box, and I did the same thing, and I centered the text. And just to make sure that everything was still centered, I did it again. I went into my transform tool and centered everything between the two. So next I am creating the transparent tab, and I'm just copying it and pasting it from my previous dividers. Once I created my first divider, it made it so much simpler to have it then for all my dividers, and I just drug that in place. And then what I did was I also copied and pasted a second one to add to my back divider. Now once this is complete, then what you do is you go in, and I am going to trace and cut. So this is the fun part. So what I'm doing is pausing the video just for a moment. Alright, so I wanted to get rid of that second one that I had. Alright, so I'm going to open up my trace tool, and I am going to trace. No, sorry. I'm going to actually move them where I want them first, and then I'll trace. So, oh, just kidding. Alright, so once you open up your trace tool, then you're going to move your threshold all the way up to 100, and then trace your outer edge. Now I'll just double check that it traced the way I wanted it to. I always move my dividers just to make sure. And then I hit Control Z so that it puts it right back to where it's supposed to be. The next thing that I do is I group everything together, and then I turn it because of the way my paper is, and I move it in place. So what I'm doing is I'm using that centering tool on the page, and that way it gets it right in the center, and it's not going to interfere with any of my lines or any of the other things. So the next thing that I do is I go through and I print, and I have a special setting in mind. I always print everything on premium photo paper at best quality. I just find that it gives me the best for what I need. So, alright guys, so that's it. If you have any questions about anything, don't forget to leave me a comment below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe, and I will be back with some more videos later. Have a great day, guys. Bye.